So I've had a few comments and a few messages recently from people asking me whether I fit the stereotypes of an INTP, because a few people have suggested that I might be an INTJ, which kind of surprises me really, because one of my best friends is an INTJ, and he is like nothing like me at all. Really, I mean, there's a few things, like a few sort of basic things which are very similar, but yeah, on the whole, we're very sort of different people. So what have we got here? We've got loner. So would I describe myself as a loner? I mean, not really. I mean, I think the term loner has a lot of sort of negative connotations attached to it. Really, it sounds like sort of a bad thing to be a loner. You know, it's like some sort of serial killer or something. The profile of a serial killer. You know, there seem to always be like these, you know, sort of loners. But no, I mean, I definitely prefer my own company to the company of other people. But that doesn't really mean that I dislike other people, or that I dislike, you know, hanging out with other people, or that I dislike any kind of sort of social interaction. So I wouldn't say that I'm a loner as such. So next one, more interested in intellectual pursuits than relationships or family. Yes, I'd say that was me. Yeah, I'm definitely more interested in intellectual pursuits than other things. As far as family's concerned, I don't really. I mean, I'm not really sort of close to my family. You know, the family that I have left, I'm not really. You know, I don't have like a kind of a connection with them, because you know they are very sort of different to me. I mean, I've got an older brother and sister who are like a lot older than me, like sort of 15, 16 years older than me, and yeah, they're sort of very different to me. They're like sort of extreme kind of extroverts, and you know they're not really sort of interested in, you know, any kind of the same sort of things that I am. You know, they're certainly not interested in intellectual pursuits or anything like that, and yeah, so I'd say I was more interested in intellectual pursuits than relationships or family. Next one, wrestles with the meaninglessness of existence. Oh yes, it's probably used to be my favourite pastime. Yeah, definitely. The next one, likes esoteric things. Yeah, I would say I do. I mean, I'm quite interested in sort of esoteric and sort of spiritual, you know, stuff like that. You know, it's certainly, you know, I find it quite fascinating. Even if I wouldn't, even though I wouldn't say that I particularly, you know, sort of agree with any kind of otherworldly explanations of things, but needless to say, I do find that sort of stuff incredibly fascinating. Next one, disorganised. Yeah, I'm pretty disorganised. Messy. Yeah, my bedroom's pretty much an absolute tip. Pretty much clothes everywhere. I mean, it's not like uninhabitable. You know, it's not like a complete and utter mess, but it's yeah, it could do with a bit of a tidy up. Likes science fiction. I mean, I've heard this one quite a lot, but I'm not really into science fiction. I'm not really into much sort of. I mean, I don't tend to watch much TV programs or movies or anything like that. So yeah, next one, can be lonely. Yeah, I guess I can be lonely when, certainly when, you know, there isn't anyone around who I can talk to about you know, anything that I would particularly want to talk about. So next one, an observer. Yes, I love observing things and people. I mean, I love human psychology, so I love watching people, you know, just go about their daily lives. And I mean, this is one of the reasons why I love one of my jobs. I mean, I've got a couple of jobs at the moment. One of them is a barman, believe it or not, which is probably the most sort of social thing that you could possibly do, or one of the most social jobs I suppose you could have. And I just love, watching people just, interact with each other, and watching their body language, and the tone of conversation, and the way in which they sort of interact with each other. I love all that sort of stuff. Private, yes, I am pretty private. Can't describe feelings easily. Yeah, I'm not very good at sort of describing my feelings or anything like that. Detached, yes. I mean, when I'm by myself, I suppose I seem to be, well, not when I'm by myself, but when I'm with other people, I suppose I try to kind of get involved in whatever's sort of happening. I always, this is where the stereotype of INTPs being chameleons comes into it. Whenever I'm in a social environment, I always try to kind of interact with people, and I always try to kind of get involved, and I always try to sort of blend in. So I like solitude. I guess that comes back to the loner stereotype. So yeah, I'd say I do like solitude. Yeah. Unemotional. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm unemotional, because I do get upset, and stuff like that every now and again, but I certainly don't show it ever. So yes, Rulebreaker. I do. I mean, I don't go out of my way to kind of break rules, but I do see rules as being, and sort of society as being, very kind of sort of politically correct, and I don't sort of agree with that. I don't, I don't think that there is, or there should be a specific way to kind of do things or to live your life. So I don't, I certainly don't go out of my way to kind of not conform with society. If I want to sort of do something that society approves of, then I'll do it. But I certainly won't go out of my way to break rules. But if there's little rules or whatever of society or whatever that I don't agree with, then I wouldn't have any problem breaking them. Familiar with the dark side. I guess that's the same as sort of the wrestling with the meaninglessness of existence stereotype. But I think everybody is familiar with the dark side to some degree. I mean, I think it would be a bit strange if you're not. I mean, I think everyone has been, sort of depressed or whatever at some point in the time. Yeah. Skeptical. Yeah, I'm extremely skeptical about pretty much everything. Acts without consulting others. I would say as a kind of a general rule, I just tend to. I mean, I always make sure that I avoid conflict. So I will never, do something which somebody else would disapprove of, and things might kick off or whatever. So I'll always kind of get involved, in that sort of thing. But I'll always try to, remain authentic. I'll always try to kind of be myself and do what I want to do. But I will kind of take into consideration, how other people might react whenever I, make a decision or whatever. Does not think they are weird, but others do. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm weird, but I don't know. Maybe you do. You'll have to let me know. Socially uncomfortable. Yes, I'd say yeah, pretty much. But I mean, the thing with this is that it's not that I dislike hanging out with people or anything like that, because I don't. I do enjoy hanging out with mates and family and other social situations, but I get uncomfortable about the conversations that happen, and all the sort of the social conventions and all the social graces that happen. I think a lot of it is very kind of very fake. Like when you meet somebody or whatever, and you say, oh hi, how you doing, did you have a nice day, like, what have you been up to, have you how are you doing, are you doing good, all these kind of like sort of fake kind of questions, that you just sort of have to do to kind of break the ice. I mean, nobody really kind of cares, what you've done today, or you know, how you're feeling, really. So those sorts of things make me feel uncomfortable, because I feel like I am being inauthentic in a lot of these kind of social interactions, because I have to put on an act in order to kind of interact with them at their level. I'm fantasy prone. I'll say, yeah, I'll say I'm kind of fantasy prone. Sometimes I let my imagination just kind of take over, and I like to, you know, just imagine myself in all sorts of weird, crazy situations and stuff. And it's something that I quite like to do, actually. I like to create sort of situations and scenarios in my head, and then I can kind of reenact them in my imagination of how I would deal with certain situations. And I found that this has helped me, actually. You know, like I keep thinking to myself, okay, what would I do in this situation? Or I do this quite a lot, sort of retrospectively. Like if I've been in a situation and I felt like I could have done better, or if I made a mistake, then I'll keep thinking about it in my head and reenacting it, and sort of analysing it in my head and thinking, okay, how could I have, you know, done that better? How can I improve myself? And, you know, that sort of thing. So, so if you class that as excuse me, as a fantasy, then yeah, that's pretty much it. Does not like happy people. I guess I keep saying today. Does not like happy people. It's not that I dislike happy people. It's just perhaps sometimes I think that happy people are perhaps missing out on something. Perhaps they don't see what I see. You know, perhaps they don't see, I don't know, the futility of existence or something. But no, I mean, I do tend to envy happy people quite a lot, because I mean, even though I wouldn't say that I mean, certainly now I wouldn't say that I'm a depressed, unhappy person or anything, but I certainly don't, or I certainly try to, you know, be happy, to try and, you know, do things that make myself happy. So when I am, you know, not happy, or when I'm in a sort of a neutral state, and I see happy people, you know, I kind of get very envious and think, well, why are you happy? You know, what is it that you know that I don't know? So, yeah. Appreciate strangeness. Yeah, I love strangeness. I love anything that's sort of considered weird or different. You know, anything that sort of breaks the mold. Anything that's you know, unconventional. I'm sort of attracted to. You know, I like to learn more about those sorts of things. Frequently loses things. Not really, if I'm being honest. I don't I don't tend to lose things. I like to actually keep things in order to some degree. I always seem to know where things are, and it's imperative that I know where things are. Acts without planning. No, I wouldn't. I'd say most of the time that I do something, I do plan for it. I always have a plan of action, and I always have several plans of action for what could possibly go wrong, or what could, you know, if I'm doing something and there's various situations that could occur, I've always planned for those in advance. I always know what is going to happen, and what, you know, if a certain thing happens, I know what to do and how to act in that particular situation. The next one is not punctual. Again, that doesn't really apply to me. I tend to be quite punctual. I mean, I'm never late for work. I'm always, you know, at my jobs. I'm always at my jobs on time. I always seem to make sure, or always try to make sure that I'm, you know, at work, or if I'm supposed to be meeting someone at a certain point at a time, then I'll always make sure that I'm there early, for example. The next one, more likely to support marijuana legalization. I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm not like a particularly big. I mean, I'm certainly not a drug addict or anything like that. I don't tend to, you know, do that many sort of drugs. I suppose nicotine occasionally. I don't tend to drink much caffeine or anything. And this is decaf, by the way, for those that have noticed. It's decaf coffee. I don't tend to drink much alcohol. I mean, I do go out and get drunk every now and again, but it's not something that I particularly do every day. And yeah, as far as weed goes, or marijuana, I don't really see a problem with it. I'm certainly not like a big stoner or anything like that, but I don't see any sort of rational reason why it should be illegal. The next one, not prone to compromise. So that was not prone to compromise. I'd kind of agree with that. I don't tend to. I mean, I'll never compromise myself. I'll always, if I'm in a situation or if someone says something that I disagree with, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to kind of argue against them, but I'm not necessarily obviously going to agree with them. And I mean, in a way, I'm a very open-minded person, and so I'm always sitting on the fence anyway. So it's very rare that I actually have a solid opinion about anything. I mean, if I do, for whatever reason, have my mind made up, then there is a specific reason why I have made my mind up, and that is because I have thought about it meticulously, and I've analysed it, and I've thought about everything to do with it, and this is the conclusion I have come to. And so, if I have definitively come to that conclusion, then it would be quite difficult to persuade me otherwise, unless someone presented some sort of compelling evidence that I had not seen before. The next one, relies on mind more than others. Yeah, I'd say I certainly rely on my mind more than other people. Yeah, from what I've seen, I tend to always rely on sort of logic and reason. I'm kind of a champion of reason. If something seems unreasonable to me, then I won't do it, even if my emotions and my instincts are telling me to do something. If I think about it properly, then if I come to a different conclusion, then I won't do it. So for me, my head rules my heart, basically. Calm. Yeah, I'm quite a calm, chilled out sort of person, I think. I don't tend to sort of lose it very often. Intellectually arrogant. I think in a way that does kind of apply to me, but it only applies to me when I feel that people are being sort of disingenuous with themselves. Like if someone has an opinion or something that they've quite clearly not even thought about, they haven't analysed it, they haven't even thought about it, then it does tend to sort of annoy me, and I will kind of sort of go at them a little bit. But yeah, if I'm being honest, I would say that I'm a little bit arrogant, sort of intellectually. I do sort of tend to think that I'm more intelligent than other people, which is it's one of my flaws, I think, because I realise that people do have a lot to offer, and sometimes, if I detect kind of intellectual inferiority or some sort of intellectual weakness, sometimes I have a tendency to just kind of dismiss people's opinions about things, because I think, well, obviously if they're not very clever, then they've not really thought about it. So, and if they've not thought about their opinions or answers, then they're probably not going to be right. So I used to tend to sort of ignore them sorts of people. I tended to sort of just sort of not really pay much attention to them. But I think now I've realised that people do have their own opinions about things, and even if they're perhaps not the sharpest knife in the rack, they still have something to offer, and and that's just me being somewhat egotistical and arrogant. But yeah, that's definitely a side of my personality that I'm sort of working on, trying to not see myself as here and everyone else as here, sort of intellectually. Yeah, I think it's about 3/4 of them, those stereotypes, were right about me. So yeah, maybe I am an INTP after all.